Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled parent stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the greatest entitled parent stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled parents you've ever heard. If you cannot stand Karens, please let me know by smashing that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Become a channel member today, and I'll give you a shout out in a video very soon. r/entitled parents. How to train your roommate. A Fortnite intervention. Edit. Believe it or not, in my 6 years on Reddit, this is my most upvoted post. Thank you guys and gals for the love, and thank you for the silver. Edit 2. Change some things to make it less identifiable to me. I don't know, 1,000 people or more made me paranoid. Super long time lurker here. This is inspired by a top post I just read from 10 days ago. I had a similar experience and typed this out in their comments, then decided to make it my first post ever. I had 3 roommates, 2 upstairs, 2 downstairs. All of us were 20 to 21 years old, yet I was the only person in the house that wasn't completely burnt from college, snowboarding, and partying. In turn, I was always the one cleaning, taking out the trash, shoveling snow, patching holes in the wall, setting up the Wi-Fi, etc. I held the lease, the utilities, the Wi-Fi, and was the sole point of contact for the landlords, neighbors, repairmen, anybody. There was actually this one time these idiots fought through my 80-inch living room window at a party we were throwing. I learned how to frame and install windows that week. Many stories like that. My roommate who lived upstairs with me was privileged. He didn't work, his parents paid for his lifestyle, and didn't bother to check up too often. We had an adjoined bathroom. Basically, if I open my bathroom door in my room and he opens his in his room, we can sit on our beds and look each other in the face. The bathroom was quite small, so it was maybe 15 feet from bed to bed. He would always leave his bathroom door open and then loudly play Fortnite all night, screaming, "Let's go," or "We got the dub, boys," waking me up multiple times a night. In the past, I was cool with everyone having weird hours and our life being a flurry of bad choices, but I was growing up, and my friends were not. I had just gotten my first salary job at a large, well-known, and hated corporate finance firm. At the bottom, hating life, being overworked, underappreciated, and being hyper-monitored. How long I pissed was a metric they looked at. It was tough. I gained 50 pounds in 6 months tough. I would wake up at 5:30 a.m., and my roommate would still be playing Fortnite. I started closing his bathroom door before I went to bed. He would just open it 30 minutes later and leave it open. I reached a boiling point one night and asked him to stop playing at night. He blew it off in his usual style, and rather than get angry, I got smart and started planning my revenge. Just like Pavlov's dogs, my friend was highly influenceable. There wasn't a lot of stimulus getting through his skull on a daily basis. First, I tried to be nice. Then, I tried full-on manipulation. I could turn off IPs from being able to connect to my Wi-Fi with ease. I don't think anyone in the house even knew that it was possible. They perceived Wi-Fi as this strange magic box you plug into an outlet, and then it just appears. I started blocking his Xbox's IP every night before bed. He started using his phone to tether to his Xbox. I started blocking his phone and his laptop, and then I would switch them back on for like 15 minutes and then disconnect them when he was in the middle of a game. I was trying to get him to believe the Wi-Fi was just messed up late at night. After weeks of hearing him stomp around in frustration and a couple of calls to the ISP and convincing clueless performance by yours truly, he admitted defeat to the formidable Wi-Fi. My original goal was to make him quieter at night. I figured he would catch on that I was doing it and simply not yell at 3 a.m. every night. What happened was much better. He started going to bed at a reasonable time and waking up at 8 a.m. to play when the Wi-Fi was going strong. Unfortunately, his cabal of 20-year-old Fortnite diehards did not have the luxury of not working and could only play at night. He got bored of playing without his friends and started hanging out at the local skate and shoe store where our mutual friend worked. And eventually, he got his very first job out of boredom. I single-handedly conditioned my friend to improve his life and mine in just 60 days, all without him knowing. Too long didn't read. My lazy roommate kept me up at night. I turned off his Wi-Fi before I went to bed, and after a series of attempts to overcome this trial, he gave up and later got a job as a result of losing his beloved Wi-Fi at night. Next up, we've got boss fires me for no reason, got what she deserves. Okay, first off, this is my first post, and I suck at writing, so forgive my spelling and grammar mistakes. I worked at a company straight out of high school that deals with sports and workwear, as well as branding. I went to the interview for a store man responsible for the cage, a place where we kept orders that were ready to be delivered, as well as orders that are still awaiting payment, starting in early 2018, and it went well for the first 2 months. Then I found a box of orders from more than 6 years ago and asked my boss about it. Her answer was to move me from the warehouse to the financial department to find out why they are still there. Now first, I know almost nothing about finance. Secondly, as a guy of over 2 meters tall sitting at a desk in a small office just doesn't work. But it came with a new job title, Finance Administrator, whatever that is, and a pay raise. So, fine with me getting paid more for the same job, and all I have to do is go through some old papers as well. Sign me up. So over the next couple of months, I made a list. I went through the whole cage and found more old orders. I found more than 80 orders, totaling over a couple million in value. Every time I figured out why they were still there, I added the reason to the list, as well as saying what happened to the items. My boss would look good in front of the owner. If there was no reason as to why it was all still there, or why it was there to begin with, my boss took that box, and I never thought of it again. I just updated the list with which boss took that order. So when I finally had a reason for every order older than 1 month that was still there, I got a raise again and went back to the original job I was hired for, still, with the finance administrator title in my contract. I was suddenly called to my boss's office, where I was told I was useless and not doing my job, and I was promptly fired. And here is where my revenge comes in. That list I had was on my computer, and the only copy of the list was in my personal email, as I would work from home sometimes. I handwrote the list and then typed it at home. So when I went to hand in my laptop, I made sure to remove everything that I did from it. No list, no emails, nothing left. I then contacted a lawyer to ask for advice. My dad recommended I do this. They have no valid reason for firing me. My lawyer had a field day with the case. I got more than 2 years worth of pay, my full contracted time, as well as an apology from my ex-boss, but it doesn't end there. I contacted the owner from the company and informed him that I still had the list, and how my boss had fired me without reason, cost the company money, and how she took stock if I couldn't find a reason as for why it was still there. He informed me that he will look into this, and I sent him the list out of good faith. He was a nice guy the few times I met him. Finally, today, I was talking to a friend that still works there. I was told that the police had shown up and had dragged my ex-boss away in cuffs for stealing stock. Next up, we've got, steal from me, I'll ruin your career. This was about 2 years ago in college. I had just moved into a house off campus with 3 of my closest friends. There were 2 other college guys already living there. All of these guys were doing Air Force ROTC with me. Basically, you go into the military after you graduate. I really liked all of my roommates and the house, except for one of the dudes that was already living there. He had a dog that would constantly rip up, pee, and poop all over the carpet, and he wouldn't clean it up. Furthermore, he would yell at us for leaving dirty dishes in the sink, etc., while he was the one making the vast majority of the mess. I had a job working 30 hours a week and doing school full-time and doing ROTC. I had a job as a server, so I would make quite a lot in tips, over $300 a week. I would leave the cash in my room boxed up because I trusted everyone in the house. We were all going to join the military, and integrity is a big thing. So I go to deposit my tips in the bank after not going for about a month, and I'm shocked when my cash deposit is only about $200 when I knew it had to be at least $1,200. I knew someone was stealing my tips then. It then made sense because my deposits had seemed a little low for a while. I was furious because I was barely scraping by, working my butt off trying to pay for college. So I buy a security camera for my room and hide it. I get all the documents from my work regarding the tips I've made over the past few months. I continue leaving my tips in the box, unconcealed as bait. I don't tell any of my roommates this. Sure enough, I leave for a trip and I get a notification on my phone. I watch as this guy that I trusted steals about $300 in cash from me, taking only $20 bills so I wouldn't notice. Well, the next day back from the trip, I schedule a meeting with our ROTC commander. I bring him all the evidence and video footage and tell him about my awful experiences with him in my house, with my other roommates as witnesses. Long story shorter, he got kicked out of ROTC and ruined his career. He had to pay me back about $1,000. I let him off easy, and had to pay the military back about $9,000. He had been getting paid by them for about a year. In addition, we go to an expensive school, and he chose a useless major. So he is stacked high in student debt with no real way out. And finally, he had just quit his job because he thought he could get away with stealing from me and watching TV at home. And he had just crashed his dream car that he had been working on for a while because he drives like an idiot. I still see him every so often on campus and smile at him. Too long didn't read. Jerk roommate steals my tips, and I ended his whole career. Insert Soldier Boy versus Super Hot Fire meme here. Next up we've got, you want me to turn the faucet off? I want you fired. To address any confusion beforehand, I work for a large local college campus as an overnight custodian. I was forced to agree to confidentiality, so no names or companies will be listed. We have the manager, the jerk, the superintendent, and human resources. Take a ride with me, my fellow Redditors, and be sure to buckle up. This is a long one. Backstory. I had been working for a month. A single month. Jerk decides he thinks I'm cute after having one conversation with me about my truck, and the events that followed are ridiculous. True. And I am a 23-year-old male presenting transgender individual. Jerk was a bit strange. He was about mid-50s, going bald, and literally talked like a 5-year-old. Many rumors spread about him using drugs, but I genuinely believe he is autistic with a speech impairment. Due to this belief, I let everything he had done to me slide. He would follow me around my work buildings, stare at me obsessively, rub himself while staring at me, and make inappropriate comments. He even showed me an inappropriate video once. I was not too happy, but I let it slide because I'm a trans man and don't need to be labeled as too sensitive. Jerk would even go so far as to follow me home, and I would find him in my yard or parked across the street from my house. This behavior had gotten worse over the course of 6 months. The stalking had gotten so bad, I got my concealed carry license, fearing he would try something. This part is extremely important. I complained to my manager. His exact words, "He likes young hot studs like you." Since the complaint wasn't taken seriously, I had threatened to go to human resources. That got his attention. The next day, manager had forgotten this all happened, and the following encounter went as such. Jerk followed me into the custodial closet.
"Hey, do you like this candy? I have a bunch and want you to have some."
Okay, thank you.
"I really wanted to tell you to turn the faucet off. You left it on last night, and I came up to turn it off. I don't like turning your faucet off."
Jerk, I never asked you to turn my faucet off. If I get in trouble, that is the manager's job to reprimand me. Any issues and complaints can be taken up with him.
"There wouldn't be an issue if you would stop being lazy and turn the faucet off."
The damage was done. I decided enough was enough. The day came. Manager had set me down and had manager 2 take the complaint. The meeting took 3 hours. The following day, manager almost paired me with him again, so I put my foot down. I told him I absolutely would not work with that man a day after a complaint was filed. Manager 2 was called to campus to come deal with me. A heated discussion followed and resulted in me being pulled from the current campus to another. They gave me the day off because I had a full-on panic attack during the encounter. The following day, Friday, I stayed outside. I wanted to make it perfectly clear I wouldn't so much as go in the same building as the jerk. I waited until he left to go collect my things and start work. Cue the superintendent walking up and pulling me into a meeting. Human Resources was already in there. I had assumed since no conversation happened about how they were going to handle this and what would happen to ensure my safety, I figured this was that talk. Nope. Superintendent.
"Look, this whole situation was blown up to unforeseen levels, and we unfortunately have to let you go. Your termination letter is right here and is effective immediately."
I look down and read the paper. Workplace violence and code of conduct violation.
Workplace violation? What did I do?
It had come to my attention that you had concealed carried a gun and threatened manager and the jerk. I was floored. I am not a confrontational person at all. I knew for a fact I had never threatened anyone in my entire life. I am shy, reserved, and typically keep to myself. At this moment, I am absolutely done. Something snapped and an entire side of me came out. The revenge. In the meeting with Human Resources and Superintendent, I requested their card and told them I'd file an EEOC complaint on the matter because I am being wrongfully terminated and that I would like to schedule an appointment to talk with Human Resources alongside a personal advocate. Human Resources. I'm not sure you can do that. You are an adult and can speak for yourself. Personal advocate or lawyer. Take your pick of which one you want there. She didn't answer me. I went on a rampage to be the biggest inconvenience to Human Resources as I possibly could, calling every 4 to 5 hours, open or closed, leaving a message every time I called. I went down there to the Human Resources office with a personal advocate at my side. They saw me in the waiting lobby and hid from me. I finally managed to get a hold of someone and scheduled an appointment. This meeting took 4 hours because I now threw manager and superintendent in the line of fire for not properly doing their jobs, laughing, not filing an official complaint, not taking proper accommodations into consideration, and not meeting immediately after the complaint. I had told them that they violated my Second Amendment right to conceal carry, that there was no justifiable proof I threatened anyone. Everything that came out of manager's mouth was pure hearsay, and they cannot fire me for something with absolutely zero proof. At most, maybe a probational period would have been adequate. I went on to tell them about the EEOC complaint for retaliation, harassment, Second Amendment violation, and anything else I could possibly think of to label this situation. The meeting ended, but I wasn't satisfied. I contacted news stations. I wrote a letter to the NRA. I wrote a letter to a transgender equality organization. I continued to harass them about the status of my case. I pressed forward with EEOC charges. A meeting was called. My EEOC representative called for settlement. They gave it to me. In addition to my job being given back to me, the firing of 4 managers, a total system management overhaul, a civil rights review, a human resources mandatory training of about 2 hours on not harassing people, and a serious chewing out to the superintendent. Jerk was also fired, all because I wanted justice for a stupid faucet. That will show you to tell me to turn the faucet off, you jerk. Before we start our next story, if you're enjoying these, please let me know by hitting the thumbs up. Try picking up my brother's girlfriend. Dad, years later, helps end your political career. This is kind of accidental revenge. Back, say, 15 years ago, my brother worked as a page for a politician down in Province House. Basically a student job where you are basically a secretary for the MLAs. There are a bunch of them. Both my brother and his then-girlfriend worked there as a page. So one night, this politician, who I already couldn't stand, hits on my brother's girlfriend. He drove her home and on the drive tries to get her to come back to his place. He's married with kids, but they would have been back in there riding 3 hours away. Anyway, he calls my brother a loser. She shouldn't be with him, basically trying to slime his way in there. He would have been 40-ish, her 21 maybe. She rebukes him, and I guess that was the only incident. But of course, my brother can't say anything and has to go back to work in the same building as this jerk. Me, my father, and my other brothers never knew anything about this incident. But we hated this guy anyway. Just a complete moron that, for whatever reason, was really popular in his writing. My brother moves on and into adult life. As young love does, him and his girl broke up. This politician keeps winning. 6 elections in a row or something like that. Always winning comfortably. Fast forward more than a decade later. My father, who was always involved in politics, never running but always involved in campaigns, goes out and helps a fledgling campaign of this guy's latest challenger. It was a neighboring riding, but Dad's riding was comfortably going for Dad's preferred candidate, so he decided to help out next door. Dad knows the area like the back of his hand, has lived in the general area his whole life. For 3 weeks, he drove this lady door to door and to every nook and cranny in the country. Dad knows most of the people in our area. The candidate had just moved back to the area within the last decade. She knew the rural part of the riding, but no connections in the main town. On election day, Dad is out picking up and rounding up supporters from all over town, going to nursing homes and trailer parks, driving his old connections to the polling station. I wasn't involved in the campaign, and I don't know for sure, but I suspect he worked as hard or harder than anyone else. Challenger wins the election by something like 20 votes. It was awesome to watch on TV. Dude must have been stunned. We all loved the result. I remember texting my little brother and how he seemed a little extra pumped than the rest of us. We were proud of Dad. I can't say how many votes Dad alone was responsible for that day, but it was more than 20. Without Dad's involvement, she would not have won. My brother called me that night and tells me the story of why he really hates the defeated MLA. Dad never knew. Maybe you couldn't call it revenge, but for my brother, it sure must have felt like it. And our final story of the day, this one from r/nuclear revenge. Mr. Taco will remember this. Hey guys, this was originally posted on r/pro-revenge, and I received a comment asking me to post it here as well. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of how I wrote this, because I tried to condense 12 years of revenge into a manageable size. If this blows up, I'll see about adding more description where I can, slightly edited for spelling and grammar. Now, to set the scene. My hometown has a public pool with a playground for children attached at the side. This place has always been immensely popular in the community and was my favorite place in the summer. I took any chance to go there with my family, or my babysitter, or my friends' families, or anyone else who would take me there. As a result, I got to know and play with damn near every kid in town at some point and got very good at socializing and making friends quickly. This continued without major incident until one hot day in August when I was 6, when he appeared. We'll call him Chad because he basically grew into one. I decided to play in the attached playground that day and quickly began a game of throw stuff with the other kids. We were all having fun throwing tiny sticks and bits of wood mulch, not anything that could cause injury. I was young, not stupid. At one point, I managed to hit Chad in the eye, which caused him to start bawling. I immediately ran up to apologize and asked if he needed any water to wash his eye, which is right when his crying stopped and he looked at me with the burning eyes of hatred only a 6-year-old can give. Chad upped the game and started throwing loose gravel from the nearby road and building, which succeeded in scaring off every kid but me, as even at that age, I had the spine to dodge and just tell him to stop. Naturally, this infuriated him to the point where he hefted a sizable chunk of broken concrete above his head and began charging straight at me. Cue a few minutes of Benny Hill music as he chased me through the various bits of playground architecture until I was cornered in a literal corner of a wooden fort. Not learning his lesson from my dodges beforehand, Chad tossed the jagged concrete right at my head and I only barely dodged most of it. One half broke before rebounding and hitting me in the back of the head, causing me to bleed profusely. Satisfied enough, and perhaps afraid of reprisal from my now very audible crying, he fled. I wound up in the hospital needing a handful of stitches, but will never forget the sight of that huge rock coming right for my face. When I gained the concept of death a few years later, I realized that Chad could have quite possibly killed me had it been a direct hit to my face. Fast forward a few weeks, and who else do I see but Chad, sitting in my first grade classroom on the first day of school. I would be dealing with Chad for the next 12 years, lifelong grudge engaged. Chad had already totally forgotten who I was, furthering and cementing my hatred. The next 5 years consisted of a war of petty revenge against each other. I would flaunt my superior test scores. He'd steal my lunch. I'd tattle to the teacher about him kissing a girl. He'd spill apple juice on me, etc. The battlefield would change in the 6th grade with a new school and a powerful new enemy, puberty. While I was furiously bashed by the puberty stick for several years, Chad got off with a light slap on the wrist. Chad basically just became a Chad. More attractive, perfect hair, no acne, played football. You get the picture. While I was just stubborn pizza face and squeaky voice. Chad would go on to join and even lead the jock group. And while I was heavily involved in sports, my general interests, temperament, and looks put me squarely in the nerd group. Our classes were finally separated as I was placed with gifted services while he took the basic course load. This came with the notable exception of gym class, which the entire grade took together. Chad and his group of budding Chads eventually decided to try and bully me during one gym class as they had found out I was friends with one of their favorite victims. As we were jogging, I was harassed in a number of ways that came to head when a proto-Chad decided to lick his hand, suddenly speed up, and smack me in the face as he sped by. Enraged, I immediately chased after the proto-Chad and kicked his legs out, causing him to fall backwards before turning right around and socking Chad in the gut, causing him to fall forwards. This all happened as the gym teacher was not paying attention. Thank you, public school system. And I continued to jog as normal, without further harassment until we went to the locker rooms to change. On my way out, Chad had the brilliant idea to rabbit punch me in the back of my head, but not continue his assault after the initial surprise. I stayed standing, turned around, saw him grinning, and proceeded to royally mess him up. He began his retreat. He attempted to turn and run, which only allowed me to grab and throw him face first into a locker, at which point the gym teacher finally came to do his job and ended the fight. Chad would go on to claim victory as he had thrown the first punch, but surprisingly enough, none of the Chads ever seemed to mess with me again. Fast forward through a handful of light shenanigans until the freshman year of high school. I have joined the wrestling team, while Chad has become the bright new star of the football team. This next incident occurred in our cafeteria, which consisted of large round tables arranged in a grid where each table could comfortably fit about a dozen students. Chad and his little Chadlings sat at a table to my table's northwest. A random group of girls sat to my table's north, and a group of Chad's favorite victims sat to the northeast of my table. Now the Chads had the brilliant idea to regularly throw bits of their lunch at the victim table, never very much at once, and only when they made sure whatever teachers on duty weren't looking. This really pissed me off, as not only were they hitting their victims, but the table of girls and my table as well whenever they got adventurous and threw something messy, like a handful of applesauce. I firmly decided to end it one day by marching past my table and sitting at the victim table in the chair that had me directly facing the Chads. This gave them pause as they could remember me and my reputation as the guy who actually fought back against bullies. Sadly, it only lasted about 7 minutes, as Chad plucked up his courage, yelled, "Food fight!" and had his table throw far more food than ever before. Naturally, nobody else wanted a part of this BS, so no other table began throwing food, but I digress. I have entered full rage mode at this point and slap both hands onto the victim's table so hard that the noise stops our elderly vice principal, who is running in to end the mess in his tracks. I march up to the Chads while ignoring the fact that I have momentarily become the sole target for food throwing. Grabbing their table, I flip the entire thing, half-thrown lunches and all, upside down and directly on top of the handful of Chads who hadn't managed to scurry out of their seats in time. Several Chads, though not the Chad, and I would be suspended for this, but I became a god for all those once bullied by the Chad. Army recruitment successful. With the sudden addition of the victim table, I had unwittingly become the leader of a group of more than 25 high school nerds, all hell-bent on ruining Chad's entire life. Alright, let's see where this goes. Between us, we collected as much information as we could and began to plan, and oh boy did we plan. We settled on just one major prank a semester and a few smaller things in between as to not get too suspicious. Cops get called on him for underage drinking and just so happen to find some drugs as well. Baloney on his car to peel the paint back, and other things I'd rather not describe as they could be incriminating. But let's just say his parents ended up paying for some damages that Chad definitely did. I will go into detail about two of my favorites though. The first involved his bike, which was actually a bike he stole from a sudden recent addition to our little group. After staking out Chad's house, we managed to find a time where the bike sat out unlocked and nobody was around to see. We proceeded to loosen all parts of the bike, just enough to make it unsafe, but not enough to be immediately noticeable. Nobody was prepared for the monumental consequences. The thought was that he would fall and hurt himself, probably while doing some trick trying to impress a girl. Sadly, I never learned the exact events, but when Chad's bike fell, he managed to accidentally, partially castrate himself. His sac was torn open and the doctor could only save one of his testicles. The most literal emasculation I've ever heard of. Now I know that's pretty terrible, but we were high schoolers in a religious community. We worked with what we had. This had the added benefit of making him a semi-pariah for several months until he managed to crush the rumors by getting an actual girlfriend. The other favorite was inspired by the movie Big Fat Liar, where they dye the villain's skin blue. At this point in senior year, we had managed to recruit a former Chad, hence referred to as Tom, into our circle who maintained his relationship with the main Chad as our sort of inside man. Tom managed to convince Chad to wear all white to prom, as that was totally the cool thing to do, bro. Using some connections with the prom planning committee, we also managed to book a very specific venue because it would have a catwalk above the dance floor. Our smallest and sneakiest member would be dressed head to toe in black and hide above the main entrance while holding a bucket half filled with various pink dyes and half filled with water, just waiting for the signal that Chad was coming. Her aim was true, her escape masterful, and the results were hilarious. I would describe Chad in that moment as aggressively pink. His suit, hair, and even face shone with the brilliance of 1,000 pink unicorns. It was so bad that the hall fined the school because they couldn't get it out of the floor. Chad was forced to shave his head, and even up to graduation itself, his skin kept a certain pinkish glow to it. He was voted most likely to be a model in our high school yearbook, but from what I've been able to hear about him since then, was anything but that. He would go on to fail out of the nice college his parents paid extra to send him to in his first year before failing out of our local community college as well. At this point, his parents have basically disowned him, and he's worked at a gas station ever since. Not only did his attitude change in the time I've known him, he continued to be an awful human being at every turn, despite all consequences we provided him and all advantages life gave to him. Entitled stage mom demands I feature her kid and throws a tantrum when told no. Cast of characters, we have entitled mom, entitled kid, and me. I have worked in the arts for years and have a lot of stories of my dealings with stage moms. One entitled mom and entitled kid in particular have been a pain in my rear for several years. Entitled kid is marginally talented, but thinks she deserves the spotlight over everyone else, and entitled mom reinforces this behavior. Anyway, this year my theater group put on a well-known musical that involved a large company of young girls. Auditions for the lead were intense, and toward the end it looked like entitled kid would be the top choice. However, one of the last girls to audition came in and blew everyone else away. She won the part, and entitled kid and entitled mom were not happy. I cast entitled kid as the understudy, as well as a part to be shared with another young actress. Big mistake. The texts and phone calls started almost immediately. Entitled mom was like,
Why is entitled kid devoting so much time to learning the lead part if she won't get to play it?
I told her, because she's the understudy for the lead role.
You need to let her play the lead for at least one night. We have family coming from out of town. They want to see her play the lead role.
That's not how understudy roles work. If something happens and the lead actress can't go on, entitled kid can step in and fill the role. I was honestly hesitant to tell her that part because I was a little afraid my lead actress would be involved in an accident, but I was trying to explain the reality of understudy roles. Besides, entitled kid has the other supportive role to play. I hoped my explanation would satisfy entitled mom, but no such luck. She wouldn't let it go and harassed me about it so much that I started to tell entitled kid to just forget the understudy part and just play the other supporting role. That role brought its own issues. The part was split between entitled kid and another actress, with them both playing the part an equal number of times. Our theater company offers 3 morning and 3 evening performances of each weekend show. I put entitled kid during the majority of morning performances and her counterpart doing more evening shows. This, unfortunately, was unsatisfactory to entitled mom, and I heard about it right away.
Oh, I wasn't aware that the other actress was getting 2 night performances.
Yes, entitled kid gets more mornings and the other actress gets more evenings. The crowds for both times are generally even, so I don't know what the big deal was.
You should split one of the evening shows and let entitled kid do act 1 and the other actress do act 2.
No.
Why not? That's the only way it's fair.
It's already split fairly. Both girls play the part 3 times in a weekend. It's absolutely fair. Entitled mom marches off to a corner to pout, and I think that's the end of it. Wrong. Just before curtain, entitled mom corners me backstage as I walk past, with my pastor's wife who was helping backstage no less.
You owe Entitled Kid an apology.
What?
You owe Entitled Kid an apology for being unfair. She is heartbroken that the other actress gets more night performances than her.
I've already told you. They get exactly the same number of performances.
You need to split one of the nights. You're the director.
At this point, all my niceness has worn off. I snapped. Yes, I am the director. This is my final decision, and I am not discussing it anymore. Now, I have a show to run, so excuse me. Everyone backstage hears her tirade and is staring at her in disbelief. My cast sees my explosion, and they think it's a bit hilarious that mild-mannered, easygoing me had finally had enough of entitled mom's ridiculous demands and let her have it. My pastor's wife tells me later that she thought I handled it better than she would have. I proceeded to shake off the incident and make my way out to the auditorium to do a little directorial schmoozing. At this point, it becomes obvious that entitled mom is not accustomed to being told no and will not let the matter rest. Some guy from entitled mom's family group comes up to me and gets up in my face.
What is your problem with Entitled Kid?
This matter is between entitled mom and me. I will not discuss it anymore.
Well, I am going to discuss this with the theater board of directors.
I am so done with this nonsense. You go right ahead and do that. Little does the guy know, I am on the board of directors and have already informed them of entitled mom and entitled kid's behavior. The other board members are well acquainted with entitled mom's obnoxiousness and tell me not to sweat the threats. The show ends up being a great success, and I have to give entitled mom a smug little smirk when the final night, not entitled kids night, is sold out and the other actress gets to perform in front of the biggest and best crowd. A word of wisdom to stage moms and entitled kids. If you get a reputation as being difficult to work with, directors will be far less likely to cast you. That's certainly the case for these two entitled individuals. As far as I'm concerned, it's chorus work for entitled kid until she and entitled mom make some attitude adjustments, which I seriously doubt. Next up we've got, entitled mom is pissed off I didn't spend enough money on her son for Christmas. Hey guys, this story is from 7 years ago. It happened around the time when I first moved to Vegas. I have a cousin who has 7 kids. I had just moved and I hadn't seen them since the youngest was in diapers. Now this cousin also has a sister who has exactly 1 child. For that 1 kid, she gets food stamps, child support, and she doesn't even work. She is that type of person who trades their food stamps for cash and blows her money on stupid things like trips to Cali and recreational activities. She literally only cares about someone if she can use them. Mind you, my cousin with the 7 works her butt off. She is a little embarrassed that she gets government help because she feels responsible for having all 7 of her children. But no matter how hard she works, she makes enough for bills, and the food stamps she gets buy just enough food to last the month. Growing kids eat a lot. Mind you, I was 20 turning 21, and I always had a lot of money left over after every check. My bills were paid on time, and I would help my mother from time to time. We visited the kids one day, and the 3rd youngest told me that Christmas was coming, but he knows he wasn't going to get anything from Santa, but he is excited that they get to eat good food on Christmas. Kids live off of ramen and ravioli. This shattered my heart. All of her kids are well behaved for the most part, and they deserved a good Christmas. I started asking them what they wanted. In order from oldest to youngest. Dax wanted headphones and a new sweater. Jen wanted a sweater and nail polish. Darren wanted a football and cake. JR wanted a soccer ball and cake. Z wanted Transformers and Power Rangers. Nana wanted My Little Pony. Jay wanted anything Paw Patrol. Names are changed, of course. So I talk to my cousin in Spanish since the kids don't understand it yet, and I tell her how I will take Christmas off and how I want to take the kids for her. She looked like she wanted to cry. She thanked me and told me she would try to pay me back. I told her no. She stated she would pick up an extra shift because she still wanted to get them something. So I got paid, and I gave myself a $40 limit per kid. I got each kid 2 big presents from Walmart, and with the remaining money, got them all small stuff from the dollar store. Her kids appreciated everything you got them. The 2 that wanted cake, they got cake. I even put a bow on it, and we hid it behind the milk and eggs in the fridge. Now I guess my cousin told her sister, because I got a call from her sister, and this is how the conversation went. We've got the entitled cousin, me, and the good child. His mom is a piece of crap, but he isn't.
Hey, Chris told me you were doing Christmas for her kids?
Yeah, they are spending Christmas Eve at my house. Mom's cooking dinner and we open presents the next morning.
Surely you have room for one more?
Are you talking about good cousin?
Of course I am.
All right, no problem. Drop him off Christmas Eve night so he can eat and watch movies, then pick him up the next morning.
No problem.
Mind you guys, after buying the kids their presents and my parents there, I was a little broke. Entitled cousin called me the day before Christmas Eve, so I scrounged what I could and got good cousin some dollar store toys. Christmas Eve comes, and my mom picks up the 7 and brings them to the house. They are flabbergasted by the presents under the tree and in the stockings with their names. The older one's goofing about who got what. I wait for an hour or two, and entitled cousin never brings good cousin. So we feed the kids and start watching movies. After about 3 movies, all of the kids pass out to food comas. The next morning, we wake and there is no word from entitled cousin. The kids start diving into their presents. JR and Darren have some Christmas cake, and they share with their siblings. Everything is in full swing. Then, banging on the door. I open it, and I'm not really happy.
Why are you banging on my...
Oh, it's you guys. Why didn't you bring good cousin last night?
Watch your mouth. I got busy and we couldn't make it.
I smelled her BS and rolled my eyes. You've said worse stuff in front of good cousin. You want to come in?
Sorry, we don't have time. Can we just get his presents, his meal, and go?
His meal?
Yeah, your mom cooked.
Yeah, last night. You were busy and the kids ate it all.
You didn't save good cousin a plate?
You never brought him, so no.
Whatever, just give us his presents.
Good cousin looks like he wants to stay and play. I felt bad for the kid. I walked in and swam through wrapping paper till I got to good cousin's presents. They were small, so I put them in a gift bag. He opened them on my porch, and his eyes lit up.
Whoa, a ninja and a wrestler. Oh, silly putty. I got a puzzle. I love this. Thank you, Momo.
I got a little glump. I hugged him back and said Merry Christmas.
That's it?
I gave her a look, trying to compose myself. Jerk meter rising. What do you mean?
How much did you spend on them?
None of your business.
You know you are selfish. You bought him these cheap toys so that you could buy Chris and her kids all that stuff. Let good cousin have one of each of their toys so it's fair.
Jerk meter explodes. Are you insane? Closes doors and covers good cousin's ears. It's Christmas. Be glad I bought anything at all. You only ever call us when you want something. You rob your son of a good time because you only care about yourself. It's not fair to him. You spend your money on crap when you have a whole child to care for. You only have one child, and because you milk your baby daddy, that poor soul pays hella money for his son, but you spend that money on your nails and other stuff. How about you act your age and be responsible for once? Entitled cousin looks shocked.
Who do you think you are?
A woman who didn't try to trap a man by getting pregnant on purpose. A woman who doesn't get assistance but pays taxes so lazy people like you can feed your kids. The woman that bought your kid Christmas presents because I wasn't selfish like his mother. Entitled cousin looked like she wanted to hit me. She would have swung if my mom hadn't come outside. Entitled cousin is intimidated by my mom. She takes good cousin and leaves. She ended up moving to Chicago to mooch off of her mother now. I hope good cousin is okay and that he doesn't pick up her horrid habits. Next up we've got, she tried to stop me from saving a man's life. But before we start, if you're enjoying these videos, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. She tried to stop me from saving a man's life. I initially posted this on r/pettyrevenge, but was suggested I post it here as well. Not sure if it really fits in entitled parents because the entitled person is the daughter, but here we go. I worked in an emergency room for 6 years, so I am full of stories, but when it comes to entitled people, this one sticks out in my memory. We have the patient, entitled daughter, critical patient, and me. Every person who has worked in the ER knows that Mondays are the busiest days of the week, and also when all the crazy stuff happens. This day was no different. I worked as a nurse in triage, where you initially get assessed in the front before going to the back. Here, we determine who needs to go back first and who can wait. We had a few stretchers in the front for people who needed to be monitored a little closer or needed IVs, blood draws, labs. There were 6 stretchers, but this day was busy, so all 6 stretchers were filled, plus 5 more in the hallway. This lady comes in on an ambulance, but because her symptoms did not indicate an emergency, she was put in stretcher triage to wait her turn. She was in a lot of pain. After assessment, I recognized her symptoms as being caused by gallstones. Painful, but in this case, not life-threatening. We put her on a stretcher, started an IV, drew labs, and hooked her up to the monitor just in case. A few minutes later, entitled daughter comes in the front door. One look at her, and we knew she would cause problems. She had everything from the shoes to the haircut. A classic rich Karen. When she saw that her mom was still in the front and hadn't seen a doctor yet, she started screaming that she knew the CEO of the hospital and that we would all be fired if we didn't get her mom back to see a doctor right now. We explained that her mom has a history of gallstones, and even the patient was saying that she has had this pain many times because of the gallstones. We explained about being really busy and that there were no rooms available in the back and we will get her back as soon as we could. She eventually calmed down, but was still antsy. About an hour later, another patient, who was the critical patient, comes in and was in the stretcher beside patient and entitled daughter. This patient had worrying complaints, but on an initial assessment, we could not find anything wrong. Now, as a nurse, you learn to always trust your gut. When your gut sounds an alarm, you listen. Something about this patient was setting my alarm bells off, but all his vitals were normal and I had no solid evidence to declare him an emergency. I hooked him up to the monitor and kept a very close eye on him. I let the charge nurse know of my concerns and she said to let her know as soon as something changes. Not 5 minutes later, something changed. Now at this time I should explain that this hospital was a level 1 trauma center, meaning we would get all the bad cases from car crashes to gunshot victims. Since we had to be ready for any traumas, life-threatening injuries, we had a room with 3 beds that was closed off from the rest of the beds because traumas usually involved a lot of people and a lot of blood. Even on busy days like this one, those rooms were empty unless there was a trauma patient. Now, back to critical patient. I was taking vital signs of patient when I looked over to critical patient. I noticed a worrying change in his heart rhythm and stopped with patient to start assessing critical patient to see what was going on. That did not sit well with entitled daughter. She actually grabbed my arm and told me to finish with her mom. I jerked my arm free and said I had to make sure critical patient was okay. As I turned around to critical patient, his rhythm went into VFib, life-threatening rhythm. With VFib, you literally only have less than a minute for life-saving interventions. I called the charge nurse to inform her of critical patient's condition, all the while unhooking critical patient from the monitor and throwing his bed into drive. As I started pushing him back to the trauma room, entitled daughter actually jumps in front of the stretcher and stops it. She's screaming that her mom was here first and needed to be seen before critical patient, and screaming that I was a liar and that she was going to get me fired. I'm usually a mild-tempered person, but knowing critical patient was literally seconds from dying, I said to entitled daughter, "You have a choice. Get out of my way or get run over," as I started pushing the stretcher forward. Now, I'm really good at pushing stretchers fast and getting the patients where they needed to go in a hurry, one of the reasons I was part of the trauma team. Entitled daughter tried to stand firm, but she saw I wasn't going to stop and jumped out of the way just as I was an inch from hitting her. Unfortunately, she did not move fast enough and I ended up running over her foot, which I found out later broke 2 bones. At this point, I didn't care and got the patient back to the trauma room, leaving entitled daughter screaming lying on the floor. We spent about 30 minutes on critical patient, but he ended up dying. By the time I got back up front, patient and entitled daughter had been taken to the back to see a doctor, but my charge nurse warned me that they were filing a complaint against me. A few days later, the actual CEO of the hospital came to visit me on my next shift. He was known to be a kind and fair man. Since this happened during a time before cameras were put in the ERs, he had to take what happened from word of mouth. Apparently, entitled daughter said I assaulted her several times and put her mom's life in danger by not assessing her properly and that I should be fired. Turned out that patient did actually have gallstones and nothing else. I calmly explained exactly what happened and that entitled daughter's actions might have ended up in critical patient dying because of the delay she caused by her actions. When I got to the part of what I said to entitled daughter and running over her foot, the CEO actually started laughing and then tried to cover his mouth to hide his laughter. He explained that entitled daughter was a friend of his sister and he knows what kind of a person she is. Not only did I not get fired, he put a personal note in my file praising my actions. On my next review, I got a large raise and a bonus thanks to the CEO's note. Side note, the hospital gave an award twice a year to 2 employees that exhibited excellent skills in their profession. In my review, they informed me that I had won this award because of the CEO's note. It came with a $500 bonus. And our fourth story. Entitled Mom tries to public shame me for having hobbies. Gets hit by karma in return. Disclaimer. Not a native speaker, and the story happened over 10 years ago, so it's probably not 100% accurate. Some context first. As said in my last post, I live in a seaside resort where the majority of the population is white, conservative, and quite well off. This story takes place while I was still in primary school, so I think I was around 8 or 9 years old, not exactly sure. In the primary school I went to, basically everyone knew each other, and most of the parents were friends, leading to the creation of a sort of community. My parents and I were labeled as outcasts, and while they tried to be friendly with us, we weren't invited to parties, barbecues, or even birthdays. Now, what did we do to deserve such a treatment? Well, exist, I guess. They never gave us any real reason, but I think it was a mix of being black, my mother not quite fitting into the lovely soccer mom archetype, and my dad's past. He's from that town and used to hang out with metalheads when he was younger, before basically disappearing for several years to travel around the world. Anyway, at that time I had average to good grades, but was often reprimanded by teachers because I was talking with my classmates during our lessons, especially with my best friend at the time, that we'll call friend for the rest of the story. The other parents did not like us very much, but my friend's mother, the entitled mom of the title, took it to a whole other level. She absolutely hated our guts. I think it started when my mother became really good friends with her ex-husband, to the point that I was banned from going to her house even for my friend's birthday. My friend and I bonded a lot because of our mutual love of video games, but while my friend wasn't allowed to play during the week, only on Wednesdays and during the weekend, and he was limited to 1 or 2 hours, my parents did not care a lot about me playing during the week as long as I did my homework and had good grades. This infuriated entitled mom, because my friend often came to my house when he was with his father to play games. So when her son's grades started to drop a little, she went off on my parents, calling my mother on her cell phone.
Yes. Are you his mother?
Yeah, what can I do for you?
Look, my son's grades have dropped significantly, and I think your son is to blame. He is disturbing the balance of our family and causing us to have to punish our son. Your son has been a bad influence on my son, and on the other pupils as well. He's not playing outside or doing sports like other kids. Instead, he just keeps playing his stupid video games or reading fantasy novels. I would like for you to punish your son. Take his DS and tell him to stop contacting my son.
I understand your concern, and we'll discuss this issue with my husband. My mother was pissed because it wasn't the first time we had to deal with that woman. See the aforementioned, "You're not allowed to enter my house or go to my son's birthday party." And entitled mom even went to the teachers to ask them to put us in different classes. If I was already treated like trash before, it got even worse, and that's around the time that the other pupils started playing a game where they basically ignored me and started saying things like, "Oh, I think I heard a voice in the wind," when I was talking. I also got bullied and thrown stones at for being black, but that's a different story. Now, if you want a satisfying ending, while the shunning continued throughout the rest of primary school and part of middle school, eventually my friend and I parted ways because we weren't enjoying the same things anymore, and he became kind of a jerk. Entitled mom's perfect boy had really bad grades, was berated by the teachers in our high school because he never worked during or outside of classes and was only disturbing everyone else. He also got into parties, alcohol, and drugs and was rejected by every school and university he applied for, so he was forced to enter an expensive private school. I live in Europe, and here private schools aren't usually the best, especially in the field he and I are in, and public schools are way better and also free. In high school, I was one of the best students of my class, and my grades, I was in the same class as F. In high school, I was one of the best students of my class and grade. I was in the same class as my friend. And because his mother assisted to the reunion where the teachers decided to give an award to the best students each trimester, she had to watch the teachers praise me while she got the stink eye for her son's behavior. One day she even called me to ask me if I could give her son lessons because he was failing too hard this trimester. I felt sorry for my friend, but his mother is a monster of entitlement. I should also add that due to an incident that occurred just a few weeks ago, she's now getting shunned by all of the other parents from that group. God is great, my friends. Too long didn't read. Entitled mom gets on my case for corrupting her son with video games. I get bullied, but eventually karma bites her in the bud. Your birthday cake belongs to me now. When I was a little ankle biter, under kindergarten age, so 4 or younger, I don't remember for sure, I went to daycare while my mom worked. I was a babysitter's dream because I was timid and never disobeyed or acted out. I was too worried about not being liked. My biggest problem was that other kids would sometimes single me out to pick on me because they knew I wouldn't retaliate. Unfortunately, my mom picked an extremely entitled horse beast of a woman to watch me. It wasn't her fault. On the surface, Dolly seemed perfect, and the kids all seemed to love her. Her program was pretty good. Clean facilities, the works. She really seemed legit. Apparently, there was just something about me that really bothered her. She would do low-key petty things to make me cry or hurt my feelings. But since I was a timid child, it never occurred to me to tell on her. When she was mean to me, it was tantamount to being in trouble for me. I didn't want my mom to know I got in trouble, so I never said anything. I managed to tolerate it until my birthday came around. Birthdays were a big deal in my house, and my cake that year was awesome. A local artist made an amazing Sesame Street cake in the shape of Big Bird. It was beautiful and delicious. Our family had a little the night before, and the next day my mom wrapped the cake up and brought it with me to share with everyone at daycare. She spoke to Dolly and made sure that it was okay. There was a lunch and snack time every day, and Dolly assured my mom that it was fine. I want to reiterate that this cake had barely been touched. Maybe 3 pieces had been eaten, and there was plenty left. All day long, I was so excited. I'm thinking about this delicious cake and how excited my friends are going to be when this beautiful cake is brought out and cut up. I even was thinking, hoping in the back of my mind, that they might even sing happy birthday to me. I had this cake built up in my mind to be a birthday party. Even to adult me, cake is always a party, but I digress. You know how it is when you're a kid and you're excited for something. That thing becomes your whole world. Visions of chocolate Big Bird dancing in my head through reading circle, through sing and play, through all of our morning activities. By the time lunchtime comes, that cake is looming so large in my head that thoughts of anything else are crowded out. The level of excitement is the kind of thing that adults never experience. You forget how to be that excited when you start adulting. That cake was the alpha and omega, the beginning and the end. There was a stairway to heaven somewhere, and that cake was at the top of it. That's how excited I was. So finally, the time comes. The cake is brought out, and the kids all ooh and ah. Big Bird is cut up, and slices are duly handed around. The kid next to me gets a piece. The kid on my side gets a piece. Everyone gets a piece of chocolate Big Bird. Except me. I'm starting to low-key panic, but I feel certain that either a mistake was made, or maybe Dolly was going to serve me last, maybe after they sang happy birthday. Nope. When Dolly takes the cake back into the kitchen area, I muster up every bit of courage I have and I approach her. Excuse me, Miss Dolly? I had a bit of a lisp back then.
Yes, OP? What is it?
I'm sorry, but I didn't get any cake.
And?
Did you forget about me?
No, I did not. Your mother said this cake was for the class. She did not say it was for you.
It was for my birthday. We brought it to share, but I was supposed to have a piece.
You already had some at home. You don't need any more.
She starts wrapping the cake, of which there is plenty left, in tinfoil.
My family will really enjoy this after dinner. Be sure to thank your mom.
By this time, disappointed tears are rolling down my face, and the sight of her wrapping up that beautiful cake, knowing she was going to keep it all for herself, was just too much for me. I began to sob brokenheartedly. As punishment for crying, I guess, I had to stand in the kitchen doorway by myself for the rest of snack time and watch as she and my friends ate my birthday cake. She made a big show of visually enjoying that cake, too. This time, I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, so I did tell my mom and she went to talk to Dolly. Of course, Dolly lied about it, but my mother, who knew my nature, took me at my word and found another place for me to go until I was old enough for school. That didn't bring back Big Bird, though. This was over 40 years ago, and to this day, it still strikes me as one of the meanest things an adult can do to a kid. Being left out is bad. Being left out of your own birthday is heartbreaking. Next up, we've got Entitled Mom asks me to lose a Pokemon battle to her cocky entitled kid. Hey, Mr. Reddit, I thought the Re-Army might enjoy this tale. This is the first story I've ever shared, so I hope you like it enough to read it. I'm on a computer and English is my first language, so please feel free to correct my grammatical errors. Also, if any other YouTuber reads this as well, please post the link to your video in the comments. Cast. We've got me, Pokemon Master. Entitled Mom. Entitled Kid. 9 years old, I think. And Mall Security. This happened well over a year ago, so forgive me if my memory isn't perfect. So I was at one of my local malls and had just finished looking through the EB Games, Canada's version of GameStop. Now, I am a rather heavyset person, so I tire easily and figured I would take a break on a bench just outside the store. So I'm just sitting there, playing Pokemon Moon with headphones in, so I didn't instantly notice the Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid that had stopped by me trying to get my attention. The Entitled Kid taps me on my leg, and I look up and remove my headphones.
Hi there.
Hello.
My son was wondering what game you were playing.
I look at Entitled Mom. Oh, this? It's Pokemon Moon version.
Oh, Mommy, I have that game too. Can I have it to play?
Sure, sweetie.
Reaches into her purse, pulling out a 3DS. The Entitled Kid then looks at me with a smug look, powers on his system, points at me and shouts,
I'm the best trainer ever. Let's battle.
I look at Entitled Mom, who nods, so I reply, All right, kid, bring it on, in a calm but confident voice. The Entitled Mom then leans over and whispers to me,
Please let him win. I don't want him to feel bad.
I awkwardly nod and the battle begins. We both have even level Pokemon, so that wasn't a factor. I was taking it easy and the kid built up a 3-5 lead on me. He had been insulting me with each move I made, but what he said next crossed the line.
Ha 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 ha. You're so pathetic. You should just quit this game. You couldn't beat a preschooler. You suck, fat butt.
Proceeds to stick his tongue out at me. Now, I don't mind taunting during battle. I mean, it's all part of really any game. However, there are lines you don't cross, and he had just crossed one. I decided then and there I was going to give him a reason he wouldn't soon forget. His cocky attitude got to me, so then I began to battle properly and coldly. Entitled Mom was watching, and her face kept contorting more and more as one by one Entitled Kid's remaining 5 Pokemon got swept aside, giving me the victory, 3-0. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid just sat there in stunned silence as I broke the connection and packed away my system, ready to resume my day. Entitled Mom stood up, grabbed my shoulder, spun me to face her, and...
How dare you! My son was supposed to win.
Entitled Kid now on the ground flailing around.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
Now, see what you've done, you fat jerk.
By now, a crowd has formed and is watching what was unfolding. Me, absolutely done with this. Listen here, lady. Removes her hand from my shoulder. First of all, never touch me again. Second, your kid. Entitled Kid is still screaming. Crossed the line with his insults. I was fine throwing the battle before that, so don't blame me. Blame that mouth on your kid.
How dare you talk about my child like that?
She tries to smack me and I block her. Just then, Mall Security, having seen the crowd, comes through and sees me holding back Entitled Mom's arm and Entitled Kid still flailing and wailing on the ground.
What the heck is going on here?
Entitled Mom steps back and plays innocent.
Oh, officer, thank God.
This brute assaulted me. and tried to steal my son's game after verbally insulting him. I want him arrested. Now!
That's not what happened. What happened is, Entitled Mom cuts me off.
Shut up, you liar!
As Entitled Mom finally tends to the screaming entitled kid, impressive lung capacity, I move aside with mall security and explain the whole situation. He radios to the security office, who checks the cameras and takes witness statements while that happens. The camera, along with the crowd, confirm my story as mall security turns to Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid.
I've heard all I need to hear.
Entitled Mom has a smug grin.
Ma'am, I know that your kid threw a fit after losing, and then you assaulted this man.
Entitled Mom turns white as a ghost while Entitled Kid just sobs.
I'm going to need you to stay here while I contact the police.
Hold on, mall security. I'm declining to press charges. It's not worth the time. Plus, as rude and obnoxious as she and her kid are, I'm not going to be responsible for ripping a parent and child apart. Mall security turns back to Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid.
You are both banned from the mall indefinitely. Be glad that's all that's happening.
Entitled Mom then grabs up Entitled Kid and stuffs his game system away, flips me, mall security, and the crowd off before running out the closest exit. With that, the crowd dispersed, and I finally went about my day. This is the first time I've told this story to anyone, so I hope you all enjoyed. Edit. Because people asked on other posts, no, I don't remember my entire team, but my 3 survivors were Evie, Sylveon, and Medicham. I used Evie's Z move to give a +2 to all stats, then used Baton Pass to Sylveon, passing the stat boosts, then repeatedly used Store Power, which gains power the more your stats change, to wipe out his team. Next up we've got Entitled Mother attacks me in a public restroom because she didn't believe in my invisible disease. English is my first language, and I am on a laptop with a Grammarly program, so please feel free to correct me if I do have any mistakes. I'm going to warn you, this may be a bit disturbing, and it will be a long one, so get comfy. Quick health lesson. I have Crohn's disease. Crohn's is a chronic inflammatory bowel disease that affects the lining of the digestive tract. Crohn's disease may affect as many as 780,000 Americans. Men and women are equally likely to be affected, and while the disease can occur at any age, Crohn's is more prevalent among adolescents and young adults between the ages of 15 and 35. I was diagnosed at the very beginning of 2013. I was 19 then, with a severe case, and for almost 9 months after was on an antibiotic cocktail that kept me on bed rest and dropped my weight from 120 pounds to 90 pounds. At this point in my story, I was a wreck, both physically and mentally, so I was not prepared to come in contact with this entitled mom. My mother's family had gathered together in St. Cloud. My family lives in Montana, but we traveled for the occasion to celebrate my grandfather's birthday, because around the time I was diagnosed, his wife, my grandmother, passed away in hospital, and this would be his first birthday without her. Everyone was there. We had a party at my uncle's house where we barbecued and swam. Except me. I stayed seated with my grandpa most of the party. My family was fantastic with me. My mother, who was a nurse, taught them about my disease not long after we found out, so they knew what I could and couldn't eat. Helped me when I needed something. My little cousin even brought me food to my spot at the table and brought me tissues and gave me hugs when I cried from anything and everything. The next day, we were going to a Twins baseball game where my uncles collectively got us a private booth to watch the game. It was very nice and comfortable for all of us. This is where our story starts. Now, as Crohn's affects the digestive system, I of course had to use the bathroom frequently because of the disease and the medications I was on. These same medications didn't allow me to absorb nutrients from the food that I ate, which from time to time would cause me to be lightheaded or downright faint. So I asked my cousin Meg to come with me to the restroom just in case. She agreed and she helped me to the bathroom. Being a baseball game, there of course was a small line. And at this point, even though I know now I had every right to use the accessible handicap bathrooms, I didn't want to take it away from someone who really needed it. I got into a stall pretty quickly, and unfortunately, it took me a while. I won't insult everyone by defining entitled parent or me, but LK is entitled parent's little girl, Meg is Meg, and OW is the other woman who was waiting in the restroom. I had probably been in the stall a good 10 minutes, feeling bitter but weak, and was finishing as quickly as I could. All of a sudden, I hear a bang on my stall door, and I jumped, terrified.
Hurry up in there. You've been in there 30 minutes. My baby needs to go. Now!
One moment, please. I am almost done. More banging as I am hurrying to finish, becoming embarrassed that someone brought any attention to my time in the stall, despite it being shorter than she claimed. I opened the door and unfortunately came face to face with a whale-sized Karen with "let me speak to the manager" haircut. Very upset, one hand raised to bang again, the other holding a little girl, 5 to 6, who in all honesty looked bored and not in a rush.
Finally. Took your...
She stopped, finally getting a good look at 90 pounds of skin and bone me. Now, despite my physical weakness, I had tried keeping up with wearing some makeup around so I wouldn't look as horrible as I felt. A lot of people asked me if I was all right throughout the game when I would walk around with my family to get food, drink, etc. Me, taking advantage of the pause, "I'm sorry for the wait, ma'am." Then, all of a sudden, before I could move out of her way, entitled parent reached out and grabbed my arm and screeched.
How dare you? Are you trying to make my daughter think it's okay to be like you?
This, of course, brought more attention to us. I tried pulling away because I was scared, embarrassed, confused, and could feel the tears coming. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I don't understand. Please let me go." I called out to my cousin who stood just outside the bathroom doors to keep out of the way of people using the room. "Meg!"
You are teaching my daughter it's okay to be anorexic like you. You think you can strut around looking like you do and feel good about yourself? You nasty girl.
I had just complete broke down right there, pleading with this woman to just let me go. My cousin, hearing my call and the woman screaming, pushed into the bathroom and yelled, "Hey, let go of her!"
Not until she apologizes for teaching my daughter it's okay to be anorexic.
The daughter was crying, but I think that was mainly all the yelling coming from her mother.
Look, you two have made her upset.
Meg, having enough because she saw how scared I was,
She's not anorexic, you cow. She has Crohn's disease. She's sick.
entitled parent looks at my cousin like she slapped her child and gets red, gripping my arm tighter.
How dare you lie to me? She is obviously anorexic and has made up some disease to cover it up and get attention.
It is a real disease. She is on medicine for it, but they cause her to lose weight along with her disease. Now let go of her. Meg reaches and pulls me away from entitled parent, making sure I was okay. But I fall to my knees, sobbing.
Look at her. How pathetic. I should get staff to remove you both from the building for promoting anorexia and pushing her fake disease.
At this point, a couple of women were staring, and a few knelt next to me to make sure I was all right, ignoring the entitled parent, which seemed to set her off more.
You idiots are falling for her lies.
Other woman, who was waiting to use the bathroom with 2 little boys, both came over with her to make sure I was okay.
Lady, either shut up, leave those girls alone, or go use the stall and get out.
Entitled parent, seeing she was not going to get any support, scoffed and dragged her still crying daughter out of the restroom, calling out that she was going to get staff to throw us out. After I had used up my strength crying, through all this I couldn't help but be broken down by her words. I don't remember much afterwards, but later on my cousin told me that a woman helped her get me up on my feet, made sure I washed my hands and face, cause public bathrooms are gross, and offered to walk with us back to our booth, which my cousin took her offer up to the door, then brought me inside. My mother knew right off something had happened. My face was chalk pale and eyes were red. I had a sizable bruise on my arm, and the time we were gone was longer than usual. After I was laid on the couch, my head on one of my aunt's lap to rest, my cousin told my mom what happened. My mother, she was upset. She went into her mama bear mode and called the office attached to the stadium we were in to complain about the harassment I had gone through. Though, because of the size of the stadium, I don't know if there was ever any way to find entitled parent, and no employees were coming around looking for me to throw me and my cousin out like she had threatened. Now, thankfully, this didn't in any way affect my grandfather's birthday, because he was already worried over me from the disease itself and was just glad to have me there with him. But at the time, I felt so badly because I thought I had ruined the day, how I was pathetic, how if I hadn't been sick, they wouldn't have to worry over me, and a whole lot of other feelings that I have thankfully now gotten control over. I am now, after changing medications and having a few surgeries, back to a normal weight of 135 pounds. I have graduated college, started working full-time in a profession I am proud of, and have married my high school sweetheart. And we just got our first puppy together. I just want to remind everyone that not all diseases or disabilities can be seen physically. You would not believe how much crap many of us go through because of our diseases, and we don't need encounters like this. Please remember to be kind to everyone because you don't know what battles they are going through. And to my fellow cronies, stay strong. r/Crohn's disease. Next we've got entitled mom calls our helpline and throws a tantrum. Now to the story. I was looking at emails on my computer when the phone rings. I pick it up to hear a sweet voice on the other end. The conversation went something like this. Hello, welcome to our company. How may I help?
So, my son's phone is broken, so you need to come and fix it.
Okay, what phone is it and what is wrong with it? Is it smashed?
Why do you need to know that?
So we know how much to charge you?
You charge people for this work? All you do is repair phones. It's not a job, so you don't get paid.
It costs money to send people out and for the tools to fix it.
Well, if you don't fix it for free, then I'm going to have you fired. I'm friends with the owner. He's called Matt.
Michael is actually my boss's name. If you're not going to buy anything, then get off the line. I've got a short temper.
Let me speak to your manager. You will be fired.
My manager is at a meeting about our department's budget, so he is currently unavailable.
Liar. I want this phone fixed, you useless jerk. And I want compensation for you wasting my time.
Yells other insults at me. Also screams and stomps and throws a tantrum, screaming like a 2-year-old with no toy. So thankful our company calls are recorded. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm going to have to hang up now.
No, you will listen to me now.
I hang up my phone, get another call, and I answer. Hello?
You're so rude. How dare you hang up on me?
I don't have to put up with you.
Hang on. Did you just insult me? Did you? Did you?
She roars. Yes, a proper roar. She also screams and cries like a child. I thought it was her kid. You're wasting my time. Shut up and act your age.
Excuse me? You are so rude.
Yes, excuse you. You have wasted my time and have given me a headache. Entitled mom starts screaming and throwing a tantrum. I need to put you on hold. It will only be a minute. I muted myself and went for my break. I came back to still hear her screaming. I'm back. You're not welcome here. Goodbye. I hang up and block her. Now, whenever I'm bored, I just listen to that recording and laugh. And our final story of the day. Give my kid an A because I said so. I'm a teacher and I've worked in the private system. You can imagine the slew of entitled parents I got on a daily basis. This entitled parent story takes the cake of my experiences. It was about 2 years ago. Child was a student in my geometry class. I gave a simple quiz the first or second week of school to give students a feel for how my quizzes and tests work and how I expect them to study. I also gave them a study guide of sample problems that was similar to the quiz and they could look up the answers. I posted that on the student portal. One question in particular was word for word and number for number the exact same question that would appear on the quiz. I do this to cover my own butt against entitled parents who claim I'm being too hard. I'm really trying not to be. Kid naturally does not study and gets okay grades, but definitely lower than average. Probably C- range. Again, this was an easy intro quiz. I know she didn't study because the exact question was one of the ones she got wrong, and she admitted she didn't study to her friends in front of me when I was going over the quiz the next day. I told the students they could correct the quiz to bump it up a letter grade, and I thought everyone left happy enough. Right? Wrong. That evening, I get a call from entitled mom and entitled dad. They are not happy with kid's grade, or the fact that kid can make corrections to make up the grade. They set up a meeting. I'm puzzled, but go ahead. Entitled Mom and Dad arrived to the meeting clearly annoyed. I showed them the study guide, the quiz, everything highlighted to show how the questions match up, and the exact same question appears on both. This is normally where most parents realize I've done nothing wrong and drop the argument. But not these two.
Well, Kid is a good girl. She deserves an A.
This math quiz isn't about how good Kid is. It's whether or not she comprehends the material. This shows she doesn't. It's clear she didn't study, and she has an opportunity to make the grade a bit higher. Besides, this is a short intro quiz. This quiz won't count for much in the long run.
But she plays sports. How can you expect her to study and get an A? You should just give it to her. You're being completely unfair.
I'm sorry, but extracurricular activities are a choice. Kid needs to balance her schedule. This quiz was 10 questions. The review sheet took most of my students about half an hour tops. They had it for 2 days before the quiz, and again, Kid can make up her grade by correcting the quiz.
But Kid is a good girl. Why can't you just change her grade to an A?
I am not changing the grade until Kid proves she understands the material by correcting the quiz. And then I will bump up her quiz by 1 letter grade, the same as I do for all my students.
We donate quite a lot to this school. Kids should be getting all A's.
At this point, the principal supervising our meeting stepped in and had to explain to them they pay for quality of education and not grades. They left rather upset, and I didn't hear from them again. Kid, for her credit, was very sweet and apologized for her parents' terrible behavior and admitted she knew she didn't study and could do better. She tried very hard for the rest of the year and came to extra help sessions, and I think she ended the year with a B-. Math wasn't her strongest subject. Thankfully, I never heard from Entitled Mom and Entitled Dad about Kid's grades again. Don't mess with the fat man. So, I have a few stories, and to be honest, I'm not sure which one these would count as, so I'm just going to say it. It goes under petty or pro-revenge. Also, if you wish to credit me for this story in a video, then credit me under D Fat Man, if you don't mind. Also, if this is used for a video, please link me to it and I will edit this post with a link to it. A small warning. I'm dyslexic, so I have a hard time with spelling and grammar, but I try my best with spell check, but sometimes it doesn't catch everything, so sorry ahead of time. So, let me start the set of stories with a statement. I can be quite the jerk. Generally, I like to say I'm a rather nice guy, but when crossed just right, I go from a saint to Satan rather fast. So keep this in mind when I tell you my 3 moments of revenge. Now for the backstory. I have a group of friends who are generally good people. I say generally because most of us are guys, and guys can do some really stupid things. I should know. I have a few stories of my own stupidity, like Supermaning out of a window or bobsledding in a shed. But that's not what this story is about. No, these stories are about a saying among my friends and one friend who just hasn't learned it. Yet. The saying is, don't mess with the fat man. Pretty simple saying, right? Now you may be wondering, why do we have this saying? That's easy. I'm the fat man, and I don't get payback. I get revenge. Who do I get revenge on? That's easy. Anyone stupid enough to mess with me. I grew up with being that fat kid who got picked on all the time. Well, growing up, I got fed up with it. So now I teach people why that's a bad idea. Enter Bob. Now Bob isn't the friend in question's name in this story. I just find it a good replacement name for his. And if you're named Bob, sorry, this isn't about you. So let me set up the scene for story 1 and 2. Among my friends, I'm the software guy. I know rather a lot about the stuff running on the computer and very little about what goes in the computer, if you understand what I'm getting at. So when something is bugging out, I'm one of the first called. No big deal really for me. Here's the thing. I normally drag my laptop with me just in case I need to pull some software from a site to fix the problem or look up an error code because it either skips my memory or I haven't seen it before. Regardless of this, I have this one rule. Don't mess with my laptop if I'm fixing yours. Not a hard rule to follow, you know? Well, Bob didn't follow that rule. How do I know this? Well, after dealing with his computer, I don't remember what the problem was, but it was something I didn't need my laptop to fix. So while I was fixing it, Bob decided upon himself to change the wallpaper on my laptop to something vastly disgusting and inappropriate to show in public. I didn't find this out until I decided to go get something to eat at a restaurant. Well, I've been there before, so they know I'm only checking messages, only to see something again, not safe for work. So after shutting my computer down fast to avoid having an issue, I began to plot my revenge. So here's what I did. I took 2 weeks to animate my revenge. So in that whole time, he thinks he got away with that. After I have it ready, I decide to stay over at my friend's house to set everything up. This is nothing out of the norm, as we tend to have LAN parties. Instead of leaving, we would all crash there. So in this case, this was a day before one, so I spent an extra day there. Now, Bob is a creature of habit, and I've seen this enough to know how he works. In the morning, Bob comes out after getting cleaned up, turns on his power, then his screen, and rapidly types in his password and walks away, all before the monitor fully wakes up. He had one of those passwords that would prevent the computer from booting up if it wasn't put in correctly. This morning, however, I was in the bathroom with a cable ran from his monitor to my laptop, and I was marrying my screen on it, which was queued up with the full window flash video. So as soon as I hear the power got turned on, thin walls were my friend that day. I hit play, so when the screen wakes up, it looks like everything is normal. Now, before I even ran the cable, I disconnected his tower completely, so it wasn't even on this whole time. Well, I'm watching the animation I made to make it look like my friend's computer was deleting itself. Again, I know I'm a jerk. So when Bob comes back with his coffee, he sees his computer being wiped out and begins to panic, to the point he's smashing his keyboard like an entitled child after having their World of Warcraft account being suspended. Now, I'm in the bathroom trying not to laugh, otherwise it would give up the goat on this. All while I hear Bob just lose his mind. So after the flash gets to the point, it requires another input. I decided to take my wireless mouse with me in my pocket. What's going on? Playing it chill like I just got done using the can.
This is some crap. My computer just deleted itself.
I'm cutting down his swearing to the bare point. Huh? Really?
Can you do anything to fix it? I mean, I don't want to lose all of my hard work.
Bob was an old school PC gamer, so I could understand what he meant, work. Sure, let's see if I can figure out the problem. Now, mind you, if you took the time to read the red screen I set up for it, it would have given up the goat right away. But Bob just saw the big bold, Windows not found error message I put at the top. Ah, I think I see what the problem is.
Please tell me you can fix it.
He sounded generally worried at this point. Oh yeah, it's an easy fix. I click the mouse in my pocket and the screen changes to look like the old "It's safe to turn off your computer" screen, but in place of it, it just simply says, "Your computer is safe, but next time I will make it happen for real. Just remember, don't mess with the fat man again." The look on his face was priceless as he read the message. Just like all of the gears in his head just froze like something threw a wrench into the middle of it and it was stuck. He got over it after I showed him the fact his computer wasn't even plugged in and that my laptop was plugged into his monitor instead. You would think Bob would have learned his lesson after the first time. Nope. He decided to have a repeat performance, but this time got crueler. Now, this was months later, close to 6 if my memory serves me right, so it's pretty much the same kind of events. He screws with my laptop, I find out, and figure out it was him. So this time I took a hard drive that I planned to wipe anyway to make it an external hard drive and replaced his with it. So before he woke up, I already set things up and unplugged the keyboard and made it so he couldn't turn off the power in any way. I don't remember how, but I know he tried to say the least. This time, however, instead of the animation, I left a simple piece of paper saying, "You shouldn't have messed with me again," with a smiley face at the bottom. So hearing him panic was rather enjoyable. He rushed to drag me out of bed, aka the floor where I was sleeping that night, to yell and scream at me, and I do mean drag, as he didn't give me a chance to even get up. Surprisingly, he could drag about 420-pound fat man down a hallway. Regardless, the computer finished clearing out the hard drive and he's threatening to beat the living heck out of me. Mostly because I was just laughing the whole time. That's when I showed him his hard drive, the one he bought for this computer to begin with, that he had set me up. The reason I know the difference here was he decided to put a sticker on his over the information, and I began to laugh harder as he grabbed the hard drive from me and tried to put it back into his computer. Surprisingly enough, he knows how to do that. So after him replacing his hard drive back in to see his computer was just fine. You'd think after the second time he'd learn his lesson. Nope. So here's the third time he messed up. This was quite a few years later, and surprisingly enough, this wasn't dealing with a computer. About a week before this, I ended up going to Chicago and trying to do Brick's Painful Pizza Challenge, a pizza that has the chemical in peppers that makes them hot, taken from a ghost pepper. When, I will admit this, the challenge beat me rather hard. I got through 6 slices through the 8-slice pizza. Afterward, let's just say me and the bathroom were enemies for like a month. Well, I end up telling my friends the story of this challenge, and in comes Bob opening his mouth.
Oh, it can't be that hot. I bet I could handle it. You're just a wimp for heat.
His words, not mine. Personally, I love having spicy foods, just the pizza was too spicy for me. Well, earlier within this month, I had lost a bet with Bob, so I had to make him one of his favorite dishes. In this case, was ravioli. On top of that, I brought one of the remaining slices of the painful pizza, mostly to see if my friends wanted to try a bite. Well, since I was so upset at Bob for opening his mouth like that, I thought some good old revenge was in order. So when I was making the stuffing for inside the ravioli, I decided to scrape off the topping into a blender so I can make it into a paste to mix in with the stuffing. So I won't bore you with the details of how to make it. Let's just say each one had an extra kick to them. I will state this, I had to bring everything with me to cook it. Why? Because his fridge was completely empty. Even worse, his kitchen sink didn't even work. So I had to go up a flight of steps to just get water from the bathtub. Keep this in mind. So I finished making his food and bring it out. He was in mid-story telling about something that happened at work. I didn't care. To be honest, I was more focused on my revenge. So he grabs the bowl from my hands, with no thank you by the way, and digs in. Now, he turns back to talk to his roommates at the time to tell the story, with his mouth full, because Bob will be Bob. Anyway, I'm behind him, trying not to laugh with my knuckle in my mouth as I was red in the face. Now, everyone knows when they suddenly get hit with that one bite that just gives up the goat. Let's just say, it didn't take him long to get to it. So he rushes into the kitchen to try to find some milk, but he was out, and he slammed the fridge door shut and goes to the sink. Sadly, his sink didn't work, and he even tries to pound on it, but nothing works. So he rushes past me and up the stairs to the bathroom. At this point, I'm on the floor laughing hard, and I do mean laughing hard. His roommates, after getting me to breathe, asked what did I do. Remember that story about Brick's Painful Pizza?
Yeah.
It took him a few seconds to realize what I did.
You didn't.
I did, I said in a higher-pitched voice. This got them laughing as we heard the tub going on. So Bob comes down and his lips are red from the bowl of food.
What did you do?
He said through heavy breaths. Remember that pizza I was talking about?
Yeah.
I put it in the food. There were a few moments of silence as his eyes were wide.
Why?
Without missing a beat, his other roommate chimed in with,
Because you messed with the fat man.
So the short version is, don't mess with the fat man. Next up we've got, you take my fries, I take your cookie. Thought I'd give you a little story of r/petty revenge regarding 2 siblings being low-grade jerks to one another. Backstory. I am the third of 4 siblings. During a period of our lives, my little brother seemed to make it his life's mission to annoy and pester the 3 oldest kids, mainly me, since I'm the closest in age to him. This story takes place during this period. We go back to the Dark Ages, aka the 2000s, when I was about 12 and little brother was about 6. Mom had us and our big sister, 16 at the time, out running errands with her since we were on summer break. At the end of our errands, our mom decided to reward us for being good, not killing each other or destroying public property, by buying us each a chocolate chip cookie from a local bakery for later, then driving through McDonald's for lunch. Mom, sis, and I each got a regular-sized meal with a sandwich, smaller fries, and a soda, and little brother got a Happy Meal with nuggets, tiny fries, a juice-like beverage, and a toy. Little brother finished his meal pretty quickly, but decided he was still hungry. So because I was the poor schmuck sitting next to him, he reached into my bag and took out my fries. Unfortunately, I was looking out the window drinking my soda when he committed Grand Theft Potato, so I couldn't stop him. And by the time I noticed what he had done, he was about 4/5 finished. He just gave me a cutesy little grin, bits of potato in his teeth. I didn't say anything, but I gave him a look that said, "This isn't over by a long shot." Fast forward to when we get home. Everyone is off doing their own thing in various parts of the house. Once I made sure no one was watching, I snuck into the kitchen and went into the pantry where Mom had put our cookies in separate bags, each one with our name on it. I ate my cookie first, then ate little brother's cookie, relishing every sweet chocolatey bite of vengeance. When little brother finally decided to go have his cookie, he discovered the empty baggie in the pantry, along with me standing in the kitchen, grinning like a Disney villain. He glowered at me, then slowly got a grin of his own when he decided to play the highest card known to sibling kind, the "I'm gonna tell Mom" card.
Mommy, Mommy.
Both Mom and Dad, who had just gotten home from work, come into the kitchen. What is it?
OP stole my cookie.
OP, did you steal your brother's cookie? Yes, I may be a petty little crap, but I'm not about to lie to my parents.
Why in the heck would you do that?
I'm a major goody two-shoes, and my parents know I wouldn't pull a stunt like this without a reason. Little brother cutting me off before I can explain.
She was mad at me because I stole her fries.
As soon as he said this, little brother got this major, "oh crud" look on his face, realizing that he had essentially shot himself in the foot. We both got a lecture from our dad saying that taking things from your siblings is wrong, and I had to go into my room for 15 minutes to think about what I had done. Mostly, I just thought about how delicious that cookie was. However, since little brother was the instigator, he lost TV and dessert privileges for a week, and whenever the family decided to watch a movie together, he'd have to go into his room for the duration of the movie. He had plenty of toys and stuff in his room to keep himself occupied, so it's not like they sent him into solitary confinement or something. Little brother and I are both adults now. I'm almost 30 and he's almost 24, and Mom still loves telling people this story at family parties and such. Next we've got, try to freeze out my family? Why don't you join us? All of this happened when I was a baby, so this story has been relayed by my mom and dad. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. It was January of 1986. Between my mom and dad, there were 3 children, all girls. My eldest sister was 4, my middle sister was 3, and I was about 6 months old. We were all living in Tennessee, and we were struggling financially, with my dad making about $5 an hour doing factory work and my mom waitressing. I know that people can raise a family on this, but this was a town of about 400 people in rural Tennessee, so money was tight. My dad was approached by my paternal grandfather, who was living with his new wife in Central California. For the sake of the story, we'll call her M. My grandfather invited my dad to come live with him and grandmother for a while and told him he could get him a job as a mechanic with the trucking company he drove for. The big 16-wheelers were the kind he drove. He said the job paid $10, which doesn't sound like a great deal today, but in 1986, that was something. My dad was a former Army sergeant who didn't receive a pension, but he did receive schooling to be a telecommunications engineer. There just wasn't a great need for them at the moment, and he was also a certified mechanic. My dad wanted to create a better world for his girls, so after cajoling my mom into accepting, she wasn't keen. They packed up the car, said goodbye to his family, and made the trip to California. I'll give a little detail at the bottom, but the move overall was a bad idea. There ended up being no mechanic job, so my dad started work as a clerk in a gas station, and my mom stayed home with grandmother and us girls. Grandmother was nice at first, but then started to get real nasty. My older sisters are from my mother's first marriage, and grandmother saw them as unwanted baggage. She would snap at them for playing too loudly and having the light on too much. Keep in mind, they are toddlers. Apparently, she was sweet to me because I was actually my father's blood and therefore was acceptable. After about a month of this, my mom told my dad it was time to leave because no one was going to treat any of her children like this. My father loves both of my sisters and agreed, but said they needed to save money to move back to Tennessee. Tax season was right around the corner, so my mom agreed that once the tax check arrived, they would be out of there. Now, what you've all been waiting for. Remember when I said Em was stingy with the lights? She was also stingy with the heat. Let me tell you guys something. January in Central California gets cold. Because we all shared a room, my dad and mom would sleep in a full-sized bed. My sisters slept in sleeping bags on the floor, and I slept in a playpen that doubled as a crib. Grandmother refused to turn on the heat, so sometimes we all squished together on the bed just for warmth. My mom and dad begged grandmother to turn on the heat for the sake of us girls. She flat out refused. After a few nights of this, my dad had enough. The revenge. Remember when I said my dad was a telecom engineer? He was also very handy and crafty, a jack of all trades and a master of none, as he says. Grandmother combated the cold with an electric heated blanket. That day, while grandmother was out, my dad went into the heated element, removed the plastic casing, carefully disconnected a few wires, placed the casing back on, and put the blanket back. It looked as it was before. That night, grandmother couldn't get the blanket to work, and the heat was on in the house. My sisters were warm, and my dad didn't have to share a bed with 3 squirmy girls. I know it doesn't sound like much, but grandmother was just awful, and my dad didn't mind taking her down a peg without her knowing. We ended up leaving a few weeks later to Florida, where my dad got a job with a cable company where he could finally put his hard-earned skills to work. And now our final story of the day. Entitled mom demands I give her hellspawn my pizza, then claims I taunted and tried to hurt her precious little baby. I've been a fan of these stories for a while and thought I'd finally post my experience with an entitled mom and entitled kid. Obligatory notice, first time posting here. Yes, English is my first language, yada yada yada. Cast, we've got entitled mom, entitled Medusa, we've got the entitled kid, and we've got me. Who do you think? And we've got the manager. Just a little background. I have Asperger's and don't do well in person-to-person situations because I have a tendency to snap when I'm in said situations. Also, I live in the Deep South, and as someone who is a Norse pagan, plus someone who isn't a balls-to-the-wall religious person, I get to deal with people constantly claiming that I'm a devil worshiper or going to hell, or something along those lines. With that out of the way, it's story time. This happened a few days ago when I went to my local Cece's Pizza to get some dinner. I was standing in line, and when I had loaded a slice of pizza onto my plate, I heard this irritating, throat-clearing sound directly in my ear. Turning around to find out what had made this ungodly sound, I found myself face to face with an actual Karen. She had the whole
Me want speak to manager.
haircut and looked like Jabba the Hutt in drag and clown makeup. And upon seeing me, she looked down at my plate, then sneered at me.
Excuse me, but my son wants that
Pizza. Sorry, but this is my slice. As you can see, they're putting a new pizza on right now. You can get a slice from that pizza.
No! My darling son wants that pizza. You give it to him now. Mommy, I want the pizza.
I already told you no. I'm trying to be nice, but you're getting really annoying right now. Please leave me alone and let me eat.
How dare you speak to me like that? You will give my son that pizza, and you will do it now.
No. Now get out of here. In retrospect, that probably was an idiotic thing to do, because I was angry, and when I get angry, I don't think straight and act irrationally in person-to-person situations. Upon hearing this, Jabba the Karen turns a shade of purple that I've only seen on grapes, and I kid you not, before screaming at me that I was, and I quote,
a horrible man who's depriving my sweet little boy his pizza.
and that I
don't deserve any pizza. My angel deserves it more.
I told her to lay off, and then went to my table to eat. When I did so, however, the entitled mom stormed up to my table, entitled kid in tow, and screeched at me about how I was so rude and disrespectful to her, and that, since she was my elder, that I should give her the pizza and be grateful she didn't call the cops on me. What about no don't you get, lady? The N or the O?
How dare you speak to me like that? I am your elder. Therefore, give my son your pizza.
No. Please leave me alone.
Mommy, I want pizza.
And like that, the little crotch goblin begins bawling his eyes out, making a scene and attracting the attention of everyone around us. Now, I'd like to point out that I don't do well in situations like this, since they make me want to snap and just freak out like some berserker or something, and the fact that I was starving wasn't making things any easier.
Now, look what you've done. You've made my baby cry. You're a horrible man.
What I did? Lady, you've been harassing me for the past 15 minutes instead of just getting a piece of pizza from the new pizza placed on the buffet line. Now get out of here. This last line got the attention of the manager, who came over to see what was going on. Upon seeing the manager, the entitled mom, Karen, gave me a condescending sneer, then turned on the waterworks when speaking to him. Ma'am, what seems to be the issue?
This man stole my son's pizza, then taunted him with it, tried to punch him, and then spat on him. I want him kicked out.
Sir, did you do what this lady claimed you did? No! She's been harassing me about a slice of pizza when she could have easily gotten a slice from the new pizza placed on the counter.
He's lying. He tried to hurt my precious little baby.
Ma'am, I can check the cameras if you like, but I have reasons to doubt he'd want to hurt.
Just look at him. He doesn't properly worship Jesus. He's a bad man.
Now, to be fair, I do look kind of threatening, since I'm 6'3", bearded, and look like a Viking. Plus, I was wearing a Guar t-shirt with morbid imagery on it. But back to the story. The manager sighs, then goes back to the counter to look over the footage and see if entitled mom was telling the truth or not. Meanwhile, the entitled mom and entitled kid have these irritatingly smug looks on their faces, which stay on their faces until the manager comes back, exhales, and turns to the entitled mom. Ma'am, I just looked over the footage, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Why?
Not only was your story completely false, but you have been harassing this man for way too long. Now leave, before I call the cops.
How dare you?
I'm not going to ask you again. Leave, or I will call the cops to remove you from the premises. The entitled mom made a bunch of blustering, gasping sounds, then glared at me and began storming towards the door. When she got to the door, the manager ran over to her and, in the most exasperated tone, says, "Just so you know, you and your son are banned from the premises for what you did to that man. Show up here again and you will be arrested." After that, the entitled mom and entitled kids storm out of the CC's, and I get to finally eat my pizza. I have to thank the manager for not only helping me out with that annoying land whale, but for apologizing for what I had to deal with and making sure I was able to enjoy my dinner. And shoutouts to our Regenerals of the day: Moonlight, Jesse Spider, Hey It's Baby Girl, and Josh Charles. Become tomorrow's Regenerals by leaving as many Rees as you can in the comments below.